Following the Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade, the Vice President has been focused on building a coalition to protect reproductive health care and is leading the administration's policy response. She has traveled the country and convened more than 50 meetings over the last year across the country focused on reproductive freedom. She has also elevated the maternal health crisis to the national stage. That is so important to our community. In December 2021, the Vice President issued a call to action to extend postpartum Medicaid coverage from 2 months to 12 months. And why does that matter? It matters because approximately 1/3 of pregnancy-related deaths occur between 1 week and 1 year postpartum. It matters. Now, because of her work, 35 states plus DC have extended their postpartum coverage. You all know the Vice President is fighting for all Americans, and we look forward to talking to her about that. Please welcome to the stage, and I love saying it again, the Vice President of the United States, Madam Vice President Kamala Harris.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Essence Fest.
Well, we are both so humbled to be here with you, especially. So let's get into it. The Supreme Court has come down recently with some interesting decisions. They're interesting. We're talking affirmative action. We're talking LGBTQ rights. We're talking about student loan forgiveness. And I know you would like to address these things directly. You have the stage.
Thank you, Sunny. And let me just start by saying, Monica and Sunny, it's so wonderful to be on the stage with you. And then to be in this room with all these incredible leaders. Don't we just love Essence Fest? It's so important that we do this. It is so important that we do this. So, you know, I am a daughter of parents who met when they were active in the civil rights movement. And among the heroes of that movement were folks like Thurgood Marshall, Charles Hamilton Houston, Constance Baker Motley, who understood the power of the law to translate the passion from the streets to the courtrooms of our country, to do the work that is about reminding us of the promise of America, which includes the promise of freedom and equality, and I would add also access to opportunity. And those of us who have chosen to take on the roles that we have believe in that promise, but are also clear-eyed that we've not yet quite achieved it, but it is worthwhile that we will work and fight to get there. And we've seen success over the years through that process. I think, dare I say, none of us would be here were it not for Brown v. Board of Education, which desegregated the schools of America. And I could go on and on with the decisions, but Sunny, to your point, we have seen from 2013 in Shelby v. Holder, where they gutted the Voting Rights Act, barely 50 years after it had been passed. And then a year ago this week, with the Dobbs decision, that court took a constitutional right that had been recognized from the women of America, from the people of America. And then just in the last, 48 hours, undoing affirmative action, taking away access to opportunity for our best and brightest who may not otherwise have access to the relationships or certain high schools that otherwise would give them the leg up. Undoing a policy that our President, Joe Biden, and I felt so strongly about, which is relieving people who have studied and don't have personal wealth of the burden of student loan debt. And by the way, don't believe the hype in terms of how some of these folks have been talking during these interviews about it, because here's the deal. With what we did to forgive student loan debt, $10,000, and if you're a Pell Grant recipient, $20,000, and if you went to an HBCU, it is likely that you are a Pell Grant recipient. The design and the implementation of that relief of student loan debt would have played out such that 90% of those who would have received it on an annual basis make less than $75,000 a year. And we're talking about young people who have otherwise talked with me, and everyone knows, who are worrying about whether they will ever be able to start a family, whether they'll ever be able to realize the American dream of buying a home, whether they'll be able to get out of debt so they can pursue a profession for which they have a passion, versus what they may have to do just to get those debts paid, even though they want to work hard and contribute to our society. This decision about the denial of understanding the importance of the evolution we had to say that businesses cannot discriminate based on who you are. And a decision that has essentially said that we're going to just throw a truck through the laws that were designed to prevent discrimination and to deprive anyone just based on who they are from having access to publicly available services. So, I say this. Coretta Scott King famously said, the fight for civil rights must be fought and won with each generation. We are that generation she spoke of at this moment in time. And so fight we must, understanding that the gains that we have made will never be permanent unless we are vigilant. And I say that means let us fight for the future we deserve. Fight for the future we deserve.
And thank you for leading that fight.
Thank you.
Along with President Biden. This kid from the South Bronx projects would not be sitting here in front of you today if it were not for affirmative action. And I'm a proud recipient of affirmative action. We need it. We need it. I'm the first person to graduate from college in my family. First person to graduate from law school in my family. And it was because of affirmative action. There's no shame in that. Now, Madam Vice President, you mentioned what just happened with the overturning of Roe v. Wade and the Dobbs decision. We just passed the 1-year mark of that, if you can believe that to be true. In your view, what has this meant for our country, and what is the administration doing to address this? Because we know you've convened reproductive and health rights activists like my co-moderator Monica Simpson here. What is going on?
So when the Dobbs decision came down about a year ago, last week actually, they took a fundamental right from the people of America, from the women of America. And I think it's really important when we talk about this issue to understand that, first of all, one does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree that the government should not be telling her what to do with her body. If she chooses, she will talk with and consult her pastor, her priest, her rabbi. But the government should not be telling her what is in her best interest. Trust the women of America. Trust the women of America to know what they need. And what we have seen happen is exactly what we so sadly and accurately predicted. women across America who are silently suffering, so many of them, who are being made to feel as though they've done something irresponsible or wrong, who are being judged, who are being denied access to essential and critical care. Understand that after the Dobbs decision came down, laws have been proposed and passed that are criminalizing physicians with significant prison time in many cases. Understand that laws are being passed in America since that decision came down a year ago that make no exception for rape or incest. And I know it's a difficult conversation to discuss, but one must discuss it because we have to be real about what's happening right now in our country. As many of you know, and Sonny, you and I share this background as prosecutors. When I became a prosecutor because my best friend in high school, I learned was being abused by her stepfather. And I said to her, you have to come live with us. And I called up my mother, she was at work, and she said, yes, she has to come live with us, and she did. Now, these extremist so-called leaders who are passing these laws saying no exception even for rape or incest, understand what they are saying, these so-called leaders. They are saying that after someone has survived a crime of violence, a violation to their body, that after that has happened, you will not have the choice about what happens to your body next. That's immoral. That's immoral. And they want to prance around as so-called leaders with their little flag pins? This is what's happening in our country right now. And I've met far too many women who have shared their stories. A woman in Texas, actually many women in Texas, who was suffering a miscarriage, went to the emergency room for help, and they turned her away. We can't help you because we're afraid about the laws, what it might do. She went back again. I need help and assistance with what's happening, this miscarriage. She wanted to carry her pregnancy to term. They turned her away. It was not until she developed sepsis that they treated her. I met another young woman who came to one of my events with her husband. She was diagnosed at 18 weeks pregnancy. They prayed to have a baby. At 18 weeks pregnancy, she was diagnosed that it was fetal disease, and that the baby would not survive. They were devastated. She wanted to then have a procedure. She was denied to have the procedure. So basically, she was being told that she should carry this, even though the diagnosis was clear about what the outcome would be. So she had to travel from Texas to Washington State to get the procedure. Now, again, let's break these things down because it's more than just some intellectual and political issue. So this young woman who prayed that she would be able to have a child and then received a diagnosis from her doctor that is devastating news, now has to be made to get a plane ticket, if she can afford it, go through TSA, sit on a plane with a bunch of strangers, to go to a healthcare provider she doesn't know to address this critical issue. It's inhumane to make people do that. And this is what's happening in our country every day. People silently having these experiences. And I think it's so important that we all speak out and say that this is a violation of basic rights that are about bodily autonomy and self-determination. And we have to stand with what we know to be right and true about the importance of foundational principles such as freedom, and say that we are not going to stand for this. And we are going to stand up and speak to the need to, one, elect members of the United States Congress who will pass national legislation to reinstate the protections of Roe v. Wade, that we will pay attention to who's governor, and if they're passing and signing these state laws, who's the attorney general, who's in the state legislature, if they're passing laws criminalizing, who's your prosecutor. And we've got to vote in our numbers and speak loudly about this grave injustice that is affecting the women of America.
Vote, 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 vote. Now I have